this, in the course of Western history, has led to a kind of universal scepticism about the possibility of knowing anything that is real or true in a whole heap of ways. Metaphysically, there's the whole business, and epistemologically, solipsism, that we'd have no access to the world of reality, that whatever we perceive is simply a product of our senses, or at least mediated by the senses, and therefore that's all we know. We only assume that it represents real things. But it transfers into the whole moral arena too, the impossibility of there being universal rights and wrongs, because look at all the differences between peoples of cultures and what have you, and surely, all morality is a projection of individualism and human self-appetite and, manipulation of society to further individual ends. And so scepticism has reared its head in a number of forms, not least of which is a kind of an epistemological and an metaphysical scepticism about reality at all. And while that's perhaps an appropriate process for science, it seems to me to be for certain natural sciences, it's a devastating process on other forms of human knowing, in which we rely upon receptivity and trust concerning matters of truth. You just think about what would happen in human relationships if, think of the fact that I've never done a DNA test to find out whether my parents are really my parents. I trust that they are. They've cared for me, they've loved me, and perhaps there would be situations, and I would grant that, where a person might want to do a DNA test to establish the biological connection with their parents. In most cases, in fact, we live by trust in our relationships. And if for the furthering of the truth and the furthering of the human community and enterprise, there is advocated not trust, but doubt, then it seems to me that philosophy, among many other arts and practices, will suffer greatly. I think the other difference too is that it seems to me that it's all the rage from the Enlightenment onwards, really, in matters of philosophy and other areas of knowing too, particularly theology, to create one's own truth and to create reality. And the human being is seen as someone who constructs and projects his or her reality upon the world. And we make things mean and we make things be what we want them to be. The human will, the autonomous human being, individual human being, creates and fashions his or her own reality. And whereas for the ancients, it seemed to me that the way in which they thought about the world, the way in which they did philosophy and theology too, was, no, we don't create reality, we receive reality. We discover it as it is, we find it, and we shape ourselves according to it. And C.S. Lewis reflects on this, of course, in his great work, The Abolition of Man, and on one of his essays about the poison of subjectivism, how, in fact, science and religion are much more closely allied, in that both science and religion recognise a world of external reality and try to shape our minds and our souls to conform to that reality. That's what science and religion have in common. But what we have today is the supremacy, not of science, it's not a battle between religion and science, but we have the supremacy of technology and magic. And technology and magic see the task of the human being to create reality as I see fit, to take reality and to shape it, manipulate it into forms so that I can dominate them. And so, in fact, while it's commonly thought that religion and magic are closely allied and science and technology are kind of, the new Gnosticism, so to speak, in fact, science and religion are great bedfellows. Technology and magic are great bedfellows too, or perhaps horrible bedfellows, because when they rule the day, then reality is whatever you want to make it and manipulate it to be. And If our universities are captive to that ideology, if our universities are captive also to the totalitarianism of productivity and utilitarianism, then again philosophy will suffer, because it'll only be as useful as it is to produce economic or social benefits. As soon as you do that to ultimate fields of knowledge and knowing, then you destroy them. I think that's part of the sickness of modern academia. Thanks for that clap, brother. That was about as much as I could bear.
Okay, so I'd just like to thank Dr. Cooper for all these wonderful words of wisdom that he's imparted to us tonight. It really struck me that the richness of what he was talking about. It brought in so much of everyday human experience. It wasn't dry and abstract, and it brought in a lot of things, questions that we ask each day, and experiences and feelings that we have each day. And that was the other thing that struck me about it. Was it wasn't purely intellectual or cerebral the way he talked about philosophy. It brought in our heart and our soul, and even our bodies, what we do. And that's a very Catholic, if I can use that word to describe it, view of philosophy, that it's not purely intellectual exercise. It involves the entire human person. It integrates all those things. So I just thought it was wonderful. If you want to hear more of Dr. Cooper, and I know I certainly do, go to study at the John Paul II Institute. It's a fantastic place to study, and he lectures in a number of subjects there. Yeah, that's all. Thanks very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next month.